Hey, truth seekers, welcome back. Zach here. In this video, I want to revisit a news story from March 15th, 2016, the date known as the Ides of March. There were mainstream headlines on this day about Anders Breivik, the man accused of the Oslo, Norway bombing from July 22nd, 2011. This story was more coded propaganda put out by the Masons and Zionists who operate in high places, world governments, world media, and more. The attack that day is coded with all of the same numbers that show up in the major terror hoaxes we've been bombarded with in the last 2 decades, what you can refer to as the post 9/11 era. So let's get into it. Let's just start with the tribute on March 15th, 2016, where Anders Breivik was in court and supposedly made this Nazi salute. First, let's revisit how the Nazis came to power in the year 1933. 33 was an important number in the Oslo attack. It was also an important number to the Nazi regime. In gematria, Nazis sums to 33, as does Berlin, where they came to power in the year 33. The Nazis are accused of the Holocaust, something that has a gematria of 33. The word Holocaust itself means burnt animal sacrifice to the gods. So when you think about that, you should ask yourself, why would we ever use that term? That's a pretty bizarre thing to say. Burnt animal sacrifice to the gods? The reason this word is chosen is for its gematria. The Masons and Zionists, this numerical coding within words is a religion to them, and they have used it all throughout history in their propaganda. In the recent Brussels, Belgium attack, this number was coded all over the airport. Just did a recent video on this. This number shows up again and again in false flag terrorism. On September 11th, when those buildings fell, they fell at the age of 33 years old. Construction began on them August 1968. They came tumbling down September 2001, 33 years later. If you read about the Holocaust, you find out that it's a fraud. The evidence given for what supposedly happened is not supported. Almost all the evidence comes from testimony at the Nuremberg trial. Most of that testimony has been debunked and admitted to be fraudulent, including that Nazis supposedly made furniture from the skin of Jews. That was presented at the time of the Nuremberg trials. That has since been taken back, saying, okay, that was an exaggeration. But as it turns out, the entire thing is an exaggeration. They say that the majority of Jews were gassed in the Holocaust with a chemical known as Zyklon B, but the testimony for how they were gassed doesn't add up. Zyklon B is a chemical that has to be heated for it to release its deadly toxin. The Nuremberg trials, it said that soldiers stood on the top of vents and dropped Zyklon B tablets into rooms full of Jews. Even had this been done, nothing would have happened because there would have been no heat to create the necessary chemical reaction to kill. Anyhow, Zyklon B, what's said to have gassed all the Jews, has gematria of 33. This story comes out of Norway. Norway is one of a few nations in Europe that has 33 gematria. Also, the date of the Oslo, Norway bombing, July 22nd, 2011, is a date with a life lesson number of 33. No surprise there. 33, always showing up coded into the hoaxes. What else stands out is the date July 22nd, written 22/7 in most parts of the world, including Norway, day before the month. When you divide 22 by 7, you get the number 3.14, the approximation of pi, the number you learned about in gematria, the number having to do with cycles and circles. We live in a world of cycles and circles, and the people who run the media program their propaganda in cycles and circles, doing it by the numbers. What's really interesting is in the English language, if you write 22 divided by 7, in gematria it sums to 314. Put a decimal point, 3.14, you have the approximation of pi. As for the location of the bombing, Oslo, Norway has gematria 58 like Freemasonry, another number that shows up big in these planned propaganda, terrorism, false flags, hoaxes, whatever you want to call them. Norway in simple English gematria also sums to 96 like Freemason. This date, March 15th, is typically the 74th day of the year. Masonic has gematria of 74. The World Trade Centers were on the 74th meridian. Another number that shows up in false flags. 33 and 74 are often paired together. Notice that the bomber's name, Anders Breivik, has gematria of 74. Here's a story about him from March 15th, Ides of March, the 74th day of the year. 74 is also a number that often has to do with sacrifice. Julius Caesar was supposedly killed on this day, one of the most famous political assassinations, March 15th. Also, the words Jesus and cross have gematria of 74, as does Messiah, as does gospel. Think about Jesus being crucified on the cross, which equals 74, just like Jesus at age 33. Here he is giving this Nazi tribute on the 74th day of the year. You see how this propaganda all comes together? Lies reinforcing older lies. This is part of the reason they do it to us. We've been programmed from a young age to be fearful of these certain boogeymen, and all of these ongoing news stories reinforce that programming that's been with us for our whole lives. We've been taught to think other boogeymen are out there while not identifying the real boogeyman, the person who puts on all this propaganda, the gang of people, the Masons and Zionists who control the media and want to control people's minds with lies. Supposedly, he killed 77 people, one of these multiples of 11. Going back to September 11th, remember Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, which is on the 77th meridian, known as the American meridian. The Pentagon is also 77 feet above ground. It's 77 feet tall. And if you look at the official flight time, it supposedly hit the Pentagon 77 minutes after taking off. One of these numbers they love to code, they love their multiples of 11. This time in the 7th month, July, 77 people killed. It happened in the time of Cancer, the astrological sign. Cancer equals 44, chemo equals 44, kill equals 44. Cancer is ruled by the moon. Think about how the moon landing happened in the time of Cancer. Armstrong equals 44, as in Neil Armstrong. Space also equals 44. It's all about controlling our mind with fear, with lies. The powers that be want to create our understanding of the world, and they do it with deception. They're trying to keep us trapped in a box they want us in. With regards to Julius Caesar has gematria of 58. I want to bring up the fact that Pythagoras, who thought gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words, was paramount, Pythagoras has gematria of 58. In the time of Julius Caesar, there was a political group known as the Pythagoreans that were in power until about the same time Julius Caesar was assassinated, supposedly. Pythagoras is credited with many mathematical theorems. He's credited with creating the musical scale. He's credited with gematria, this practice of coding numbers into words. In truth, he probably stole all this information from prior civilizations and it's credited to him. But it's just interesting to note how deep this gematria language is, how it connects to these older things known from history, such as the musical scale and the mathematical theorems. Breivik got the maximum sentence in Norway, 21 years. They don't have life sentences over there. Their maximum sentence is 21 years. But notice, his prison sentence started in 2012 for 21 years. That means he'll get out in 2033. You see this? It's because it's all part of a joke. Anders Breivik is an actor playing the part of the man responsible. He's just a stooge. He's, a patsy. The real people responsible are the Masons and Zionists in high places in Norway's government and other nations' governments that execute these attacks as part of the agenda by the numbers. What else is interesting to note is that since the attacks have happened, it has sparked this debate of what should they do with the real estate that's there. It's older real estate. Prior to the bombing, people were already talking about tearing down the structures to build something new there. The buildings that were bombed were known as the H block, which has gematria of 33, go figure, as well as 51, the number of conspiracy. Think about here in the United States, Area 51. The word federal is 33 the small way and 51 the big way as well. After the bombings, they hired a Swedish Jew to build 3 monuments that cost multi-million dollars as a tribute to the bombing. What's funny about them getting a Swedish Jew is Swedish has gematria of 33, just like Norway. Talked about all the 33 in the attack. The artist's name was Dahlberg, Jewish name. 39 gematria, fitting. The Jews go by the 39 books in the Old Testament. Likely a Zionist, born into the gang. Happy to accept a few more tax dollars for the ongoing propaganda. Of the 3 statues he built, the most striking one is known as Memory Wound. Just think about that name, Memory Wound. I mean, you see what they're trying to do. They're trying to scar people's minds with lies and unnecessary fear. And then they take their tax dollars and build a tribute called Memory Wound. It's all about controlling your mind's eye. They've scarred the mind's eyes of the people of this world with their ongoing lies, and they've done it to us from a young age by making us go to their mandatory schools where we're taught nothing but useless information and how to push paper and believe nonsense and obey authority, The gematria of Memory Wound is interesting. 58, like Freemasonry, like Oslo, Norway. Also 166, another number that shows up in false flag terror. Twin Towers equals 166. Tetragrammaton, the Hebrew word for God, 166. September 11, One World Order. See what's going on here? Where the bombing occurred, a lot of the property was owned by this billionaire, Olav Thon, a Norwegian, and a proud Zionist, someone who speaks out for Israel and speaks against people who condemn Israel. I notice his birth numerology, born on a date with 58 numerology, a Norwegian. You can listen to this guy speak in favor of Israel. He even wears decorative Israel neck ribbons. It's not hard to see what's going on here. Anders Breivik, giving tributes to the Nazis. The Nazis were a boogeyman force created by the Zionists. The reason Hitler was able to finance the army that he was is because the Zionists invested in him. They played him. It's all part of their agenda. And they've used him as, a scapegoat ever since, as an excuse for ongoing wrongdoing, including the Zionist nation of Israel. World War I was about establishing Israel. World War II was about fulfilling Israel. Now we see what's going on with all this Islamic boogeyman threats in Europe. They're saying all these Jews are emigrating out of Europe, immigrating to Israel. Before long, they're going to need their bigger Zionist nation. We're living out the ongoing agenda, and this is how it's achieved. Story after story, lie after lie, put out by this Masonic Zionist media. I'm going to link this video down in the description right here. This guy, Paul Stahl Service, not a channel I'm exactly familiar with, but he did this video and he caught how this Olav Thon had employees working at the recent Brussels, Belgium terror hoax. And again, he owned the property where the Oslo, Norway terror hoax occurred. This is what it is: Zionist agents selling out the world, manufacturing this propaganda for the sake of their very transparent agenda if you only open your eyes. So that's the message, truth seeker. For you Norwegians, you got the same things going on in your country that we got going on in here in the United States, in Belgium, in Madrid, in the UK. Zionists all over the world hoaxing people by the same numbers again and again. This Olav Thon character reminds of Larry Silverstein, who bought the World Trade Centers from the Port Authority just months before September 11th. And then he bought the Sears Tower in Chicago the day of the Madrid train bombings, March 11th. March 11th is also the date in history that the World Trade Center project was first proposed by the Rockefeller family. 3/11, 9/11. Notice this attack in Oslo was on the 22nd day, just like it was in Brussels. 22, the master builder number in numerology. The word master in gematria equals 22. All right, truth seeker, until next time.